Now let's take a look at some concrete examples. What I've written here is a very simple main method. Here I'm creating a scanner object. I'm going to use it to get user input from the keyboard. A prompt is printed, and I'm going to use the next line method of the scanner object to wait for the user to enter something and hit enter. And that something will be stored in input string 1 as a string. Now I've declared a local variable called input1, set it to 0 for now. And here is the main part I'm going to show you here. There's a try block which starts from line 14 and ends on line 18. So this try block has got 3 statements. Now line 15 simply prints out a line to the screen, checkpoint W, to show you that the line has executed. Line 16 calls this method called integer.parseIn. Now what is this method all about? Okay, for those not familiar, I'm looking at the integer class. The integer class has got this method called parseIn. There are two overloaded methods. Okay, the one I'm using is the one which takes in only a single string. Now let's look at the documentation. It is a static method, so I'm going to call it directly class name dot method name. So integer dot parseIn. Now it takes in a string and it returns an int. Basically, it converts the input string into its integer equivalent. So if I pass in a string a123, it's going to return me the integer 123. Now note this part here. API documentation shows you the exceptions which may possibly be thrown by when you call this method, thrown to the caller. So it's documented here. This method will throw a number format exception if the input string does not contain a passable integer. That's an error condition. For example, if I call parseIn and pass in a string ABC, this parseIn method is going to throw back to the caller a number format exception. So this, what am I trying to do on line 16? I'm trying to convert the input string into an integer. Okay, I'm going to store it in input1. Now some of you may be wondering, why don't I use the scanner's next in method? Okay, put that aside. I'm trying to demonstrate how to use the integer.parseIn method. In fact, the next in method basically does something like that to convert the input string into an integer anyway. So line 17 prints out another statement to show that that statement has executed. This is the catch block, also known as the exception handler. And this catch block specifically catches a number format exception. So line 16 might cause a number format exception, which might be caught here in this catch block. So when a number format exception occurs, I'll go to line 20, print out an error message, and I'll carry on to line 23. Okay? Now let's, this is safe, let's compile this and run it. Okay, let's try to trace through the program. Okay, it's important for you guys to understand what lines you run and in what sequence. So now the program is stuck at line 9. It's waiting for me to enter a number on line 9. So I'm going to enter 1, 2, 3, 4 as a you'll be taken in as a string. From line 9, I'll go to line 11. I'll go to line 14. Go to into the try block, line 15, and print out checkpoint W. That's what you see here, checkpoint W. I'll go to line 16. Okay, perform the conversion. So what we start in input 1, the number 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, after having called the parseIn method successfully, I'll go to line 17, print out checkpoint X. That's the end of the try block. All the statements in the try block have been successfully, executed. What's next? I'm going to skip the catch block. So this whole thing will be skipped. I'm going to go to line 23 and print out your number plus 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, that's strange. Oh, this is a very silly mistake of mine. Save it. Let me compile this again. Run it again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to print 1, 2, 3, 5. Alright. So what happens is that now I'm using brackets to force this to happen first. Input 1 is an integer. Integer plus 1 gives you an integer. Now the problem just now is without these brackets, I'm actually doing a string concatenation first. I'm concatenating a string with input 1, which will be converted into a string, and that final string will be concatenated with 1 again, and that's why I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and that's not exactly what I'm interested in. So now it's working correctly. This is the first scenario. No exceptions caused. No exceptions from line 15 to line 17. Now, let's run the program again. This time I'm going to enter something which cannot be converted into an integer. Okay, let's see. So the program starts. We move on to line 11, line 14, line 15, and prints out checkpoint W. All right. Then I go on to line 16. Line 16 has a problem. Okay, what is the problem? A number format exception has occurred. Now, this point, it is important for you to remember that subsequent statements in the try block, in this case line 17, will not run. I'm going to skip all the subsequent statements after line 16, okay, in the try block. And from line 16, I'm going to jump to the catch block. In this case, the catch block which catches a number format exception. In this case, this method causes a number format exception to be thrown, and it is caught here. So I'll jump to line 20, print out an error message, and that's what you see here. Okay. After the catch block has executed, in this case there's only one statement, line 20, but you can have multiple statements in the catch block, no problem. I'll move on to line 23. So as far as the exception, this exception is concerned, the number format exception, it has been correctly handled in the catch block, and the program continues running as though nothing has happened. So line 23 will carry on running. Okay, and that's why it prints out your number plus 1 is 1, because the default input 1 value is 0. Of course, 0 plus 1 is 1. Okay, so important point to note, again, reminder number 1, all the statements after the statement which has caused an exception, in this case line 16, will not execute. Line 17 will be skipped, and I'll go to the catch block. Okay. It is possible to have multiple catch blocks, and I'm going to talk about the finally keyword in the next section.